Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Guadalajara, Ancho Reyes, Montelobos, the UK, and so much more. It is my pleasure to finally bring this great chat with the prestigious and lauded Mr. Dr. Ivan Saldaña, the author of The Anatomy of Mezcal, the co-creator of Ancho Reyes and Montelobos Mezcal. We talk about his journey as he was here in Austin teaching a class, talking about innovation, talking about creativity, heritage, tradition, and his deep, deep passion for agave. Great to sit down with him, sip some mezcal on that lovely porch at Las Perlas, and talk about life with this deeply pensive, deeply intelligent man who has the future of mezcal and the future of agave always on his mind. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoyed this great chat with Dr. Ivan Saldaña.
We had Montelobos, that is really my most close baby, but there's also Ancho Reyes. And for first time, we formalized that we are not only Montelobos and Ancho, but we are something else that can bring the diversity and the extraordinary flavors and biology of Mexico into spirit. So we created Casalumbre.
Casalumbre. Okay,
Casalumbre, which is kind of the umbrella company now that holds the new ideas and the new projects and existing ones.
The
like
incubator?
Ancho It's something like that, yes. It's an exploratory platform to discover what could be incredible to bring into the world of alcohol from Mexican origin. So there's a lot of things going on right now in the lab, in research and development, and new products will come eventually.
I'm very excited about that. We're talking. We'll keep it. Mum's the word, but we talked about some stuff that sounds really, really exciting that will come out.
And for the brand, for Montelobos, was the year in which I finally was able to bring other varieties of agaves in the right way, as we always commit to. We never wanted to bring wild agaves varieties, but cultivated ones. I had the chance 2.5 years ago to meet Aaron Alba, a visionary, a guy from a tiny little town in Puebla who has been planting different varieties of agaves there. So we built an entire new distillery there when we discovered these plantations of tobalas and other plants. And last year, finally, we materialized that into Montelobos Tobala. We launched in Mexico. Yeah. We also launched a third Montelobos that is an ensemble, a mix of different agaves.
So let's treat these children, again, the bottles in front of us, like chapters.
Yes, okay. I like that.
So the first thing, though, and as we and we'll talk about Guadalajara, where you grew up in a moment, but I think of you, you're a decorated scholar. You're an academic erudite. Right? This is a really, really brilliant guy. You have a massive resume. I always could consider the scholarly thinking chemist guys to not always be the most creative, right? They're thinking analytically, but they couldn't paint a picture necessarily. But for you, you seem like this interesting hybrid of both a creative and a pensive mind, but yet a deeply analytical scientist. Do you find that you're both of those things?
I love what you're mentioning, because no, it's uncommon that they go or they like to learn more about how I perceive or how I enjoy or which skills I actually use in my work. But I totally agree. I mean, I spent a lot of years in formal academia.
Yeah.
I did research, write papers. The teaching part was amazing, and I mean, a lot of that I enjoyed, but I also felt sometimes a little bit trapped, because the creative and the context of what is important in that research, in that discovery, sometimes were very arid between the academic world, like academics talking to other people in the academia.
It's a bubble, isn't it?
It's a bubble, and suddenly to dedicate my energy and my passion to the spirit world allows me to continue having this rational thinking and to exercise my mind with a lot of very technical problems that I love, but at the same time to have a different listener, to have the opportunity to be more creative, more free. Go out of the box and also deal with the part that cannot really be quantified, or like the flavors of mezcal. There's a dimension in mezcal that you cannot rationalize because goes far beyond what analytical skills can actually achieve.
It's in opposition to science.
Exactly.
Right? It's almost like antimatter. It's emotions. These things you cannot quantify.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Love. Because love you can never prove, but you know it's there and you can taste it and you can smell it and you can see it. It's strange. But so for me, the fact that you're able to embrace both of those sides makes you pretty well. I'm kind of intimidated right now. You're very well.
No, but what I would say, what has been really fascinating through is that you never end learning, and it's very interesting. But most mezcal, it's very little people doing mezcal, but at the same time wanting to understand it from different perspectives.
Right.
Not only as a ritualistic or as a delicious spirit that is mysterious and obscure, that you go to a little place in the middle of nowhere and you buy it and repack it and resell it.
Right.
I mean, I think that's how mezcal was originally introduced in the world, like adventurers trying to share these experiences, but never getting involved in the production of it.
No, it's almost like, it's strange, we're consumers, right? And we never go back to think, well, where does our food come from? Exactly. Where does this bottle come from? And you have been a conduit for Mexico. You've been a spokesman for mezcal, and do you feel like people are listening now?
I really think there's a special moment in the world right now where people is really wanting to understand where they're coming from and what is really valuable and what is not. I think after the 2009 crisis, where I think the entire world were finally clear that the big products and the big companies were not synonymous of quality and were not synonymous of, were actually sometimes the contrary.
Yeah.
So I think right now people relate to their own persona through products that have a much more meaningful origin and a meaningful offers a meaningful experience.
Sure.
And in that sense, mezcal is an incredibly attractive product. And the same has happened with the food.
Right.
No?
Again, we're talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's this interest that is a global trend. Aspects like sustainability or the opportunity to taste flavors that are uncommon to you. I think that the spirit industry in the last 50 years, 60 years, since after Second World War, they took the concepts of quality as consistency.
Sure.
And they forgot that alcohol is an agronomical product. They started to think it's a product where it doesn't matter where the raw materials come from, and it's absolutely wrong. And they started to simplify spirits and products to make it as simple as they can, and just at the end add the flavors they wanted.
Yeah.
So the idea that it's much better to provide the same experience every time, that's hierarchically for most large companies more important than provided the best possible flavor on each bottle they sell, the most
even
complex.
If you can't make the same money.
Even if there's some sacrifice of consistency.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that has to come back. I mean, only very few countries, specifically France and Italy, just after Second World War, they realized that their entire economy deserved to recognize artisanal products.
Right.
I mean, the Ministry of Economy and Commerce is a minister of artisanal products too, and it's in the same.
Sure.
The office is Economy and Craft. Let's say that's the name in Italy. And when you look what we consume from Italy, we actually consume that origin, and you can think
almost more than anything else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The cheese, the wine, the meat.
Everything has a last name. Everything has a story.
Right.
Everything, and they protect and they care about that. And they are the most, I think, probably the guys who make more profit out of their traditional products because they have been able to do that. France is another one that have done it. But places like Mexico and the developed world, they started to copy it in the 80s. All this McDonald's concept that
Stamped
to be
templates,
successful was to drink a global brand. I mean, I remember drinking Absolute Vodka, and I honestly connected when I was 18.
Yeah.
Like I was suddenly a citizen of the world. You know? I was there having
It
this
transported
emotional
you.
relationship with something that was present all around the world.
That's interesting.
And I was feeding my emotion with the experience of having a global brand. But we are not in the 90s, in the 80s anymore. We are in a new time, in a new moment where people want to travel without going to places. You can travel by smelling a glass of mezcal or through food as well. And
it's transportative. It's unfamiliar.
Exactly.
This is a good thing, right? Yeah, I to your point, it's nice to experiencing what's happening, I think, is people consume, whether it's music, whether it's movies, but it becomes so homogenized. I mean, there's so many superhero movies. Just for instance, it's really safe, and you know what you're going to get.
Yes.
But it's causing a backlash and a little bit of a vacuum for people like you and I, and even younger people getting out of academia. They're saying, no, I want to curate my own experience. I want to explore. And mezcal is the perfect topic and the perfect place for people to find their deep interest in the world and people that make such products.
Exactly. And I think these introverted emotional connections to a product like mezcal, now I think is what is really driving the authenticity of the experience. And I am really happy. I think for me right now to have the opportunity to dedicate my time to create spirits and to create teams of people and to have liaisons like I do with the producers of Montelobos, Don Abel and Don Aron in the Oaxaca and Puebla places, but also other new things like what we have been doing with Ancho Reyes and things. It's an incredible moment. It's a possibility to do something I enjoy, but it's fantastic to have a market, to know that the world is open and ready to enjoy new experiences that has fundamentals, that has an origin, that
fewer
has
obstacles than ever too, which is great. The world's flat, more than it ever has been.
Yeah,
because everybody's connected. So we're looking at these three amazing mezcales before us, the three kids in the Montelobos family. Let's start with Guadalajara and you as a kid, and let's sip the Espadín. And just tell me a little bit about Espadín. Obviously, one of the most accessible, one of the most ubiquitous types of mezcal. But tell me, this is a Oaxacan Espadín?
This is a Oaxacan Espadín made with organic agave, coming from the Tlacolula region. So Tlacolula is in the Central Valleys. It's like a very high plain between mountains from the Sierra Madre in Mexico, in a very unique space. Oaxaca is where the Atlantic and the Pacific get closer in North America. So, and also the mountains from the Sierra Madre Occidental and the Sierra Madre Oriental, they get really messy. They just stuck together. Right. So Oaxaca has a lot of environments, a lot of diversity. Yeah. That's why you have the most of the diversity of agaves based there. And culturally also, 13 different languages being spoken. Sure. You have so much there. And the region that is most famous for its agave and its mezcal is the Tlacolula district that has different municipalities. Some are hanging from the mountains and some are in the plain. Right. So we do this in Loma Larga in a ranch that is like 15 minutes away from Matatlan town, but it's within the Matatlan district. We built the distillery with the Lopez family in 2013 we started, and 2014 we totally moved. We originally Montelobos Espadín, born in Old Palenque, the Lopez family had, but we decided to move. We were next to the road in Matatlan City, and the water wasn't that good anymore because it's well water, but it's quite polluted. Yeah. They decided to make this silly expansion of the road. And we were not comfortable anymore, so we better went to the middle of nowhere.
Sometimes
we are surrounded with agaves, and it feels like like mezcal.
Tell me, so someone that hasn't been to that particular palenque, or other people that might be listening, what are a few words that can help them be transported to this place, this beautiful
So it's a place in which you are surrounded with chains of mountains, and you have the right perspective. They are not so far you will not notice them, but also not so close that they are impeding you to see through the entire view.
Right.
And well, we are surrounded with the agaves we also consume there. Like Loma Larga is a ranch for growing agave mostly.
And it's beautiful.
And it's very beautiful. Yes.
Green, lush.
Very green, because depending on the seasons. Well, that region in Oaxaca is semi-arid, so 8 months of the year is very dry, and 4 months is extremely green when it rains, and the soil is let water to come through, and in fact there's lots of water below surface. If you just dig 4 or 5 meters where we are, you get water, but in the surface it can be extremely dry.
Amazing.
So you have trees that are super green, but weed is totally dry. It's like, it looks sometimes like Italy, like when you are in the countryside of Italy, what is in your mind, it's kind of like that.
So what does this taste like to you?
So this espadín wants to bring in a lot of balanced herbaceousness, which is one of the incredible characteristics of the agave plant, the sweetness, the caramelic sweetness of the agave, the smoke, and of course the funkiness that wild fermentations bring. So for me, and the purpose of this mezcal was to try to bring in a very accessible way this complexity of this different group of flavors. So for me, the smell, for example, of Montelobos is like being in a forest after some rain comes down. It's like it smells humid, like wet soil, but also like if the conifers were releasing their aromas into your face.
A big plant orgy, Ivan. Perhaps a big plant orgy.
Absolutely. And also has some smoke, but it's like, it feels like wilderness.
It does.
Like really.
It takes me to a place that's outside of this city, metropolitan.
Yes.
So as we sip this, your interest, or at least your relationship with agave, starts early on. Your father, now, I never could understand or find out exactly what his relationship was to agave, but he worked in that industry?
Yeah, well, my father did. He was very entrepreneurial, let's say, through his life. He got into establishing tilapia farms at some point,
and really?
He moved to different things. But he was probably the first one to start to develop the industry of the agave nectar.
Really?
In fact, his company used to be called Industrias Colibrí Azul, or the Colibri Company, and he was the first one to call the sweet sugars of agave nectar, because of the idea of the colibri going to
seep out.
And this was 1990, where
no one knew about this stuff.
There was a professor in the Universidad de Guadalajara with a patent, and he started to develop that project. And he was one of the biggest promoters of that industry early on.
Wow.
So I was close because of that, but also I had an uncle that developed a brand of tequila at that time.
Still around?
No, the brand, no. What, with other friends, but was a weird development. The brand had a different name, but at the end they make a deal with the football team, their Chivas.
Oh, really?
And they brought this tequila called Chivas Campeonísimo that eventually they kill it for obvious reason. If you have a sport team, you don't want a tequila linked to that. But anyway,
I mean, I don't think it might be considered a performance-enhancing drug. I know mezcal helps. I often feel better and that I'm doing a better job. So, already this mezcal, the first one, has helped me out here.
And well, when at the beginning, my relationship with agave, that wasn't that obvious, really.
It was around.
It's easy to be in Guadalajara and connect to something related with agave, because tequila is such a big industry, and I mean, my family has been in Jalisco for generations, so it was a normal thing. But I just realized the interest of that plant a few years after.
Yeah.
Well, I was into conservation really strongly since I was 14, traveling the world.
Which actually, so here's the interesting thing, going back to the duality, the creative piece, and the very scientific forward mind. Early on, did you have a proclivity towards one or the other? Did you go into academia because it was easier? Was it an expectation, or was it really truly your main interest?
I think I was always attracted by even when I was really young,
Yeah.
by the academic conception.
Yeah.
You know, seeing these beautiful old buildings with clever people.
Right.
I mean, I was attracted to that, and I wanted to experience that since I was 7 years old.
Amazing.
So the cachet or the elegance that at that time that photograph brought to me. I remember like seeing movies like the Dead Poet Society
you were
or
gonna
things
say
like
that,
that. And I was like totally amazed or saying, I want this scholar air surrounding me. So I think some of the
it's
imagination those images create,
romance
was stuck with me. But what to study? I was between economy and biology at some point. I fell in love with nature through my teenage times. I work in national parks in Ecuador, in Chile, in California, in Mexico, many from Chiapas to Tabasco, Yucatan. All my summers, I didn't earn money, but I put my time for free in exchange of food and a nice place. So I started first as a volunteer by myself, and eventually I became a group leader.
Yeah.
And I started to travel. Then is when I started to go to Chile because I was like leading conservation people and camping and doing this stuff. And that's when I started to put biology in my mind more strongly.
So why? And I love Montreal. I love it. I hear I'm not going to talk about it online, but there are beautiful women in Montreal.
They are.
They're all brunettes too, which it really does appeal to me. And I was going to ask you, having this romantic relationship with academia, but Dead Poet Society is a brilliant example.
Yeah.
Or Back to School, maybe. Yeah. But was that part of it? The romance of meeting the poetic woman that just drives you mad and you're like, I can't stand you, but I love you. Was that piece of it too?
Well, I think I had a couple of those relationships through my life, for sure. So I've been in love with someone almost systematically. So I'm like a serial monogamer, if you want to say.
But that's okay. I think that's pretty.
Yeah. So I like to focus. I get very deep into what is actually happening in a particular moment. But what I would say is, Montreal was the last year of the degree, the bachelor degree. So I studied in Mexico. I studied in Barbados, in Canada, and in Chile as well. Amazing. I came back to Chile because I fell in love with a girl, imagine. Yeah. So I used to fall in love with women quite often, but one at a time.
Oh, good.
Most of the time.
Well, you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
It really helps to just one at a time. Much better.
And that is when I discover I'm passionate about understanding how plants cope with difficulties. It's in Montreal with an Indian teacher that I took plant and stress course. So I was studying how plants feel, sense, but at the cellular level. So it's very weird. The plants cannot move, so they cannot avoid their
threats.
Their threats.
Right.
They have to, in a very Zen way, find solutions from the inside out. So the plasticity of the biochemistry of plants within the organisms that exist is incredible. I mean, a plant has a lot of solutions to difficulties. And I was studying that in Montreal, and I got very clear that I wanted to understand better this mechanism, how plants can solve these things.
What's beautiful? It's a stoicism, in a sense, right? Plants
Absolutely.
can't move, but it's a way of keeping your head up and carrying on. It is almost an analogy for how we, as people, have to endure things that we don't want to endure, and sometimes lashing out is the wrong thing to do. So in other words, we can learn a lot from the plants.
And if you want another metaphor I like a lot, in a way they are stoic, they don't move, but they are the most flexible things. So it's how can you be absolutely open to all possible solutions without really moving? So it's not avoiding, it's like accepting, embracing what you have. And well, metabolically, well, basically our metabolism is a certain rules of things, a certain order your organism has to maintain a flow of energy and matter that keep life alive. Is something can be bended and changed in plants in a way doesn't happen with mammals like with us. We have to be in a very static temperature in a very specific condition. So even though plants may look boring because you cannot see physical movement, in terms of their metabolism, they are surprisingly powerful and surprisingly changing machines. And that's hooked me, and I decided to make a PhD on that.
Not a bad deal. It sounds like a pretty good field. And you used the word Zen the other day, or rather just earlier. You're familiar with George Harrison of the Beatles, right? I've been watching the documentary about his life, and he found this moment, the Maharishi and the rest of the guys, John and he, specifically John Lennon, they realized that it was just about staying in the same place and meditating, right? Mm-hmm. And letting it all in and adapting as it kind of hits you. And it's strange how plants, in a sense, we can aspire to be more like that.
Completely.
That they're in some sense a guide.
But the only way to stand and stay is to be flexible. That's
so strange, though, isn't it?
There's no way to stand and be rigid about things. You really have to bend and to adapt yourself and that's really why, in a way, my model plant when I went to the PhD was at the end agave. I went to the plant stress unit in the University of Sussex. I arrived in not the best time, honestly, because it was a department extremely with a lot of credentials and like very well known through the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. But I was arriving just after a big American university bought half of the professors of the unit. So, and this happened when I was already accepted. I said no to go to McGill. That I was studying there, but I love it, and it's a great university. And I had also this desire of living in the UK. I think the same kind of romanticism of that. So
I still have that one. Yeah.
So I said no. I already lived in Canada. That is, I want to go to the UK to England. So when I get there wasn't as good as used to be in terms of academic, talk shop guys or whatever. Right. But the great thing, and that's great of the way you do PhDs in the UK, is that you become your own boss much more than here. Here you have teams, and you're doing a PhD, but you have an advisor or a supervisor that is above you that kind of choose your subjects. There was like, welcome, here's your chair, here's your office. You have 6 months to tell me what you're going to be doing in the next 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And through that, I went to all possible projects already running in the university, and nothing was really what I wanted. And then is when comes to my mind, look, if you're going to study this beautiful, romantic information and the way plants can actually cope with difficulties, at least choose something that is useful and is close to your heart and close to your country. So instead of studying, I don't know, carnivorous plants, there were people.
They're exciting, but
they don't have minerals where they grow, so they have to obtain the minerals from the flies they trap. They don't really eat them; they only obtain the minerals. Or other projects, they were studying resurrection plants. These things you get in the westerns. These plants that goes running around, you know. Those things can be in draw for 50 years, and then some water falls down and they get green again.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, but all of that was not that attractive in terms of and how that translates to the everyday life of people. Yeah. So I proposed to study agave, and they said yes, and was very surprising. One of the good things of not being or having a supervisor was the chance I had to decide my own destiny, academic destiny, let's say. So I spent a lot of time bringing agaves into the UK, which was a crazy thing. Almost 3 tons of alive.
How hard is that getting that past customs?
Let me tell you, I thought it would be incredibly hard because I said, come on, blue agaves should be super protected.
Right.
You know? It was more harder to getting in than getting out. To getting it out, I just had to go to a government office, so they checked there were no pests on the plants, and just like onions, I was able to bring these agaves out of Mexico. It was crazy.
Wow.
But to get them in, the DEFRA office, I still remember, I was dealing with the office in the UK that deals with imports of exotic plants. Yeah. I had to prove that agave couldn't spread like crazy in the wild.
Invasive species.
And I say, of course not. This place is so rainy, they will die in really, really fast with the cold weather, the lack of sunshine and the humidity. And eventually they say, okay, no problem, you can bring them in. And I became a mason, a builder, because I didn't have much money to hire who to build the space for the agave, so I had to create all the beds where all my agaves were seated there
on
for
campus?
many years. On campus, really? So I got a big greenhouse. my plants used to live better than me, my friend. I was in a hole in a tiny little Victorian house in Brighton.
Yeah.
You know, later on I was able to move few floors above, thanks God. But
I think the agave are thanking you now, though. They're saying they're paying it back.
Yeah,
he took pretty good care. It's all karmic, right?
Yeah, and well, I was able to bring all these plants, but for the first year, the job was to ensure the agaves were okay again, because the operation was complicated. We went to Arandas, and we took these 2.5 tons of alive agaves of 2 different ages, and in less than 24 hours, I was picking them up in the Gatwick Airport in a van, but they came harmed because some leaves had to go away, the normal thing. So 1 year was about making those plants to come back in this greenhouse with artificial lamps.
Did it work?
They work. Well, all my entire PhD is based on the information I got from studying the metabolisms of sugars in these plants.
That's amazing.
So they gave me a lot at the end of the day, but I also had to take care of them. I was like healing them and watering them, and I was really after being a mason, I became a gardener. And I was saying, but I came here to be a scientist. What's happening? You know, you get really stressed when you are doing it. Eventually, I took more serious the analytical part, and I was then doing proper science. But
well, that's good. So when you finish, because all right, that's actually kind of an exciting story. It reminds me of the Martians a little bit. A guy's trying to grow potatoes on Mars. You're trying to grow agave in England. It's a worthy pursuit.
No, I had for first time my 5 minutes of fame, because the local news learned this crazy Mexican was bringing agaves from Mexico to study agaves in Britain, which is the worst place to be an agave, let's say.
Who does he think he is?
The BBC and ITV News, and they went to, and I was feeling $1 million. You can imagine. They started to make me questions in the lab, and I was going to be the weird, the fun element in the night news, you know. So I remember after they came and interviewed me, I'm ready to see in ITV News, and I get so sad and disappointed because they took a photograph of me, or let's say not a photo, a small tiny shot of me with my white coat taking care of the agaves, and then people making shots in the bar, and I was like,
oh, come on.
I am trying to understand the core questions of the biology of the agave, and you are mixing with these drunk people. And honestly, through my entire PhD, I never thought my job later on would be to distill spirits.
Yeah.
I mean, until then I was really thinking, oh no, I would love to teach and to do research and I liked it a lot, but I was lacking of certain social element and certain level of creativity, the opportunity to break the rules.
Right.
Because it can be very squarish, the life of the academic.
Absolutely.
So when I finished the PhD, I was between going to Switzerland for a postdoc or accepting a job in the industry. And suddenly, this PhD young guy gets into the corporate world, which was, for me, is like my second PhD. And my
Pernod Ricard, right?
With Pernod Ricard.
Yeah.
I started in the research and lab, R&D lab, and I ended as like the technical guy in charge of the 4 distilleries, 84 engineers under my side, until I got bored because I was not able to do any interesting thing anymore.
So, as we sip the second child, the Tobala, which is the near present, we'll call it. We've talked about the past, the near present, and then we talk about the future with the ensemble, which we're really looking forward to trying. The first time, well, first off, give me...
That's yours, yes.
I'm lucky enough to secure it, Tobala. Thank you so much, Ivan.
You're welcome.
This is just hitting. This is just new to the market, in Texas especially. So what are some of the things you really love about the Tobala?
Well, this Tobala was a complex process because, well, first, the thing I love more is this is cultivated Tobala.
Yeah.
Again, I was Montelobos. I was restricting myself to bring new expressions because I was not able to find cultivated agaves from other varieties. And well, Aaron, as I mentioned it, I think already, Aaron, who is the producer I'm making this, Aaron Alba, was a visionary who started to plant Tobalas since 2000.
Amazing.
And right now he has the largest plantations of Tobala in the world. Of course, the
Did he
world
see
of
it
agave is Mexico.
Did he see it coming? What is ultimately the
His father used to make mezcal, but from the wild. And Puebla was a region where almost all mezcal was coming from the wild, and they finished it.
Oh,
So they
geez.
stopped making mezcal.
Oh, wow.
And the only way to bring back the image of his father making the mezcal was to make more agave in
Himself?
order to actually make mezcal.
Wow.
So he started to invest and to research about how to bring these tiny little seeds into little plants and eventually plant them back in the hills. And he has explored from semi-cultivation, that is only wait until the plant is certain size so it can survive, and placing it in a hill,
Right.
to more cultivated ones in which you take more care of the plants through time.
So he is the Ivan, the agave father, taking care of those plants like you were in Brighton.
Exactly, in a totally different proportion, dimension, and everything.
Do you guys
But
learn a
I
lot from each
absolutely-
other?
Sorry?
Like, do you learn a lot from each other, being in that relatively same position that you were years ago? Do you learn things about how to plant, what things work?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I understand the biology of the plant really well, but I mean, these guys are growers of agaves. I mean,
Yeah.
I know I have learned and everything, but I have never been in charge of taking care of 5 hectares or, this.
Right.
It's a different level of knowledge, and also it's a lot of knowledge of the environment, of the soil, of the place that
Yeah.
you don't get easily. You have to
Years, right?
Yeah, to be part of the lineage of the place. So I love that, and the purpose of this mezcal was really to twist a little bit the methods they use in Puebla to bring a very in front agave. It's super green,
Yeah, the nose is really
super sweet. It's
interesting.
about
Yeah.
the sweetness and the herbaceousness, and it's an agave that has lots of fat as well.
Fat.
Yeah, it's a lot
Really?
of wax. The agave has to protect themselves to losing the water they accumulate.
So
So the way they do is they have a layer of wax all around the external surface, and they produce lots of oils and waxes to not let the water to escape.
No
So
kidding.
certain agaves that are very stressed, another agave that is really oily is agave duranguensis, for example.
okay.
That is really, really, really oily. Has this quality. So for me, this gives like certain notes of macadamia or nuts, the
Lipids.
grease,
Yeah.
the fat that you can actually get
Oh, amazing.
in the spirit. And again, the anise, the very green, like pear, you can get pear as well. It's very, very green. And the entire process of making these tovala is about letting like the experience of the agave to come forward. So the smoke is very subtle. The proof is also higher. It's like 47 ABV. So the higher a mezcal is, the higher proof it is, less smoke you generally feel.
Yeah.
It's related to the other flavors are much more enhanced by that proof. So smoke is not that strong. Also, the funkiness of it is a little bit hidden because really the plant is talking.
Yeah,
the
I don't get any
sweetness.
lactic cheesiness, right? This
Yeah.
is beautiful. So one of the things you get from Puebla specifically, because many, or rather 2 of the mezcals that I've had from Puebla, they're single distillation. Is this
Okay.
also
No,
twice?
this is two distillation.
See, that's interesting in Puebla because they use the Filipino style still, and they do the single rectification, and then it has
But
a little
did you,
bit.
what you tried was made in a tiny artisanal column, probably,
Yes,
or not?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
column, when you use plates in columns, you could kind of equalize that
rectify,
every
kind of,
plate
yeah.
correspond to one distillation. It's probably exaggerated, at least half distillation.
Yeah.
So a 4-plate steel
Yeah.
or column will kind of make you a 2 distillation product.
No, it's a good point. This just to me, sometimes the lactic and the cheesy quality, which comes from sometimes letting the agave out too long after you've roasted it, and then these kind of fungus or whatever come bacteria. This is beautiful because this is bright, tight, round, and unctuous. It doesn't give me any of that funk, like you're saying.
And I
It's
love
hidden.
your mentioning that because on the third you're going to discover a lot of that, and I'm going to explain you why later. But also, all those flavors comes at a certain point in distillation.
Mm-hmm.
So the tails, which is the last bit where alcohol is coming lower, water is in a larger proportion. The temperature of the still can get higher temperature. So
Right.
the things that comes out are elements that have a boiling point that is a little bit higher, and that have more link with water than with alcohol, let's say, is where you get these cheesy notes. So the smoke and the funk, a lot of the funkiness of wild fermentation, like the very fruity esters and the cheesy elements, comes at the tail.
The coolest,
this is a very high cutted, let's say,
you guys are making
high proof.
Yeah.
We cut this at 62 ABV, and then we proof it down with water. So it's a very
tight,
specific cut. It's the heart and the higher part of it. But we don't get the. But I keep it, and then I use it for the second. So all the tail.
So you're blending it back in. The coolest.
Well, we're gonna talk about the third later on.
Amazing.
The third is a mixture of cupreata and espadín mostly that we cook together and ferment together and distill together. But then it also have a third element, which is the tails of this one that I'm not using. And all that cheesiness you are talking, you're gonna discover it in the next mezcal. I feel like the Christmas ghosts, remember, that go to the past, the present, and the future. So when we are talking to the future ghosts, we will talk about the cheesiness again.
Well, here's the great thing. So I like this. I love music and I love performing. And in a way, having a room hinge on your every educated word there's an allure to that. This element of performance. You were just in Dallas. You're in San Antonio tomorrow and probably throughout the weekend. As a performer, as a creative mind, how do you like being in front of the audience? Those questions, the inquisitive looks.
Well, I love, and that's one of the, I mean, the type of questions you make is going to make this interview one of the most memorable I have had in a long time.
I'm so glad to hear that.
In the marketing world, generally questions just go to a certain point most of the time, you know. And sometimes brands wants to give the message of what the product is and the key element that everybody will remember. So
differentiating factor.
Will buy. So, and I think most of the time the journalist that covers spirits, and they are looking for that bite of information, but they are not getting further, neither in the story of the maker and just like that. When I have the chance to make seminars, we're going to have a seminar later on.
Yeah.
I enjoy when people comes a little bit out of the typical line. I mean, not only like, oh, and where your agave is coming from, or what's the material of your steel. Well, those things sounds very nerdy, but are really questions you would expect.
Yeah.
You know, but when people make more complicated questions, things that are not. Many things that are not even scientific, that are like, why mezcals make me feel like this, or if you don't have an answer, what would be an answer if you had to answer that?
Yeah.
Those things I love.
You like
you
it.
know, and I think I love to talk to consumers. I like bartenders, but bartenders, when you come to small, medium-sized cities where they know each other, they are performing too.
That's right. That is a brilliant thing. You're absolutely right. It's pretentious.
Yeah, so you are performing, but they are performing. So if they make a question or they don't make a question, it is also a relationship with the role and the image they want to present to their other peers.
That's
you know?
It's
the same in the academic world.
You're right. That's how you can pick it out, right?
You were going to a conference and you knew who would make what question, and there was a professor with this research that for sure he would pull the thing into. That's a respectable thing. But when you talk to consumers that are really passionate and really thirsty of knowledge, and they don't need to I mean, they make their money and their persona and their self-confidence is not coming from their peers. Really, I enjoy it a lot. Are more honest, simple questions that
you never get nervous, right?
Huh?
You ever get nervous?
No, not at this point. I think one of the skills you learn in academia is to expose yourself to sharing ideas or information, and then hearing back. In academia, it's even tougher because even though you're supposed to obtain information through science, you are questioned all the time. Yeah. So it's everything you say is available to be questioned. But yeah, no, I think I feel quite comfortable talking.
Oh, I could tell. And you're an author. I mean, you've been in front of crowds. No, it's nothing new for you.
No, it could be boring or exciting.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's actually reflective of the audience itself sometimes,
absolutely.
Right? They help that performance. So while we're still in the present, before we talk about your being here in Austin and perhaps the class you'll be facilitating in San Antonio this weekend, what inspires you as a man that is both scientific and creative? Is it music? Is it art? Is it people? What helps you get to a place where you're inspired, where you can be creative?
Okay, so you basically are saying which elements in my context will put me in the mood, or will that's your
let's
question,
say you're struggling. Let's say you're Ernest Hemingway and you're in your writing room and you got another novel in you.
Okay.
You're trying to find something that will
peak. Traveling. I mean, I think food.
Yeah.
I mean, I really get a lot about tasting and smelling things. Traveling, and I love to talk about anything. Also. So I think the metaphoric, a lot of the creativity I have done in my life it comes a lot, I think, in trying to reflect a metaphor of something, but in the world of flavors. Like sometimes you want liquids that has two things are fighting against each other, or that complements, or I think those things are really amazing. And also, I get really inspired in creating or working with spirits on the agricultural side, or where the place where the plant's coming out. That is the most exciting thing, to find the growers of the raw materials we use. Like, I know we're talking Montelobos, but for Ancho, go and discover Don Saul, who is the man who grows every single chili we use in Ancho Reyes.
Amazing.
The process of the adventure of getting into the car in tiny little towns and talk with growers to select which one is going to be the one that is very exciting, the human element of it. So I think that's what really feed the mood for creativity.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, before we talk, I want to make this comment. The Ancho Reyes Verde is one of the greatest things.
Oh, thank you. It's an incredible compliment, the one you are giving.
I can use it in my eggs, and it is a beautiful fucking thing.
It's like a sauce.
Oh, my God, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's got everything you want, subtle sweetness, the fresh crispness, the green, the vegetal poblano flavor.
Yeah.
It is a wet dream for chili heads. And every time someone comes over, I've got it in the freezer because it has this interesting texture when you freeze, when it's in there.
Yeah.
And I hand it to somebody and say, just sip this. It's wonderful. It'll pique the interest in your mind, amuse-bouche, if you will. And they love it every time. It is a great conversation piece. So thank you for that.
Oh,
if nothing else.
It's a teamwork. I would say Verde is really a product that came out, well, is a second Ancho, but is a product of a lot of experiences and the incredible nose that works with me, Guadalupe, I have to say it, Lupita. She's even better in analyzing with the nose things.
Amazing.
And it's really in a great way her product.
Yeah. It's a lovely thing. It resonates,
incredible.
Man. I mean, it's a hit. It may be underground, but it's something that people are listening to and they're putting on that turntable and they're enjoying in their house. It's an amazing thing. So talking about why you're here in Austin to discuss Montelobos at Las Perlas here in Austin, Texas, we're going to talk about the future. We have a few minutes left. You're about to hit the stage. Camille's kind of tapping her watch. Right? We're going to talk about the ensemble. As you mentioned, you're already blending the colas from the Tobala.
First, I have to say that right now,
that's
Padin
right.
is in the U.S.
Yeah.
Tobala will be very soon. We expect to launch middle this year. And Ensemble doesn't have a date to be launched in the U.S. yet.
So this is...
It's in the market in Mexico already.
Right. But
we don't know when we're going to have it available
in the
that
US. My mouth's watering, and I'm actually here. I have the privilege of getting to try this. But for everybody that's listening, this will come. We don't know when.
Yeah.
But it is another
expression. It's a reality. It
exists. Is a reality.
You can buy it in Mexico, and eventually you will buy it here in the U.S.
That's incredible.
So
tell me about the blend. Yeah.
So it's the first time I make a mezcal that makes different agaves, and it has been a wonderful experience because you have a good degree of chances of controlling the experience.
Yeah.
So different agaves provide different things. Cupreata is a very vegetal agave, so you get a a intense vegetal citrusy that you can trap there. Espadín brings a lot of the sweetness.
Right.
But also this product is about funkiness. This is the one where I allowed myself the chance to bring notes that are more weird or more
funkiness.
Funky,
I like that. Zappa, Frank Zappa. I use that analogy a lot. It's a concept record for you. You're going out on a limb. You're trying something new.
Yeah.
Sergeant Pepper's, maybe, right?
So it's very savory. It's very mineral.
Yeah.
It's green as well, but it has a strong presence of the lactic fermentative side.
What's the proof on this guy?
This is 45
45.
ABV.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
First time trying this one. I've had the other two. This is really.
And it has Cupriata and Espadín, and then the Tovala. But what I'm adding there is the more acidic tail fraction, the last fraction that comes off the steel that I decided not to include here. I am including in this other one. And this more raw, savory, acidic element is here. It's very earthy, and it's probably not from the tree. This is maybe not the starting point for someone who doesn't know mezcal.
Right.
This may require a little bit more of a palate that is open to.
That's exciting, though. I mean, I almost get a little mint. I love that kind of illusion of mint sometimes. It's brilliant. I mean, it's a thinker, but it's still very enjoyable. Sometimes it can be too polarizing, too much cheese, too much acidity.
No,
this is beautiful.
Yeah. You clearly can see it, but this is the resolution. Let's say the way I like if this were a printing printed photograph.
Right.
I like a lot the detail. So you can have a lot of flavors going on, but you need to give its own time and space so you can really find it in a defined way, in a resoluted way.
Yeah.
So this product has a lactic thing, but also has the sweetness, and you can put your attention on things. It's not the mix of everything. It something happens first and then something else happens after.
Yeah.
So it allows you to separate the different flavors while you're tasting it, and I think it's cool. It's clearly much more fermentative, but that doesn't overlap and let everything else out of the equation.
They each have their place in the narrative, absolutely, and it is an evolution of the core concept, as I'm sure you have evolved. San Antonio Cocktail Conference is this weekend, and I've got 2 questions left for you. You're gonna again. I hear the drum roll. You're about to hit the stage. What are we in store for the seminar at the San Antonio Cocktail Conference this year?
Well, in the seminar, I'm a participant. I was invited by Ricardo Pico, a dear friend of mine who is in the entrepreneurship of bringing Sotol into the world.
Amazing.
And they have wonderful products in the Clande brand.
Oh, yeah. Ricardo, brilliant guy.
Yeah.
Lovely guy.
And basically, we're going to talk about the relevance or not relevance and the implications of the denominations of origins in Mexican spirits.
We'll talk about that.
I am very critical on some ways.
Yeah.
So we're going to be a little bit technical at some points on the regulations, but the core idea, I think, should be to share with the public why a denomination is useful or why it may not be useful to maintain an authentic, pure product out there. You're going to have Sergio Mendoza.
Yeah, from
Don Fulano.
Yeah.
It's going to be Ricardo. It's going to be me. And it's going to be a woman, Miriam, that makes agricole rum, but in the Mexican style, a charanda. It's a Mexican rum from Michoacan that has a denomination of origin. Yeah.
So the last question, I have no idea how you're going to answer this. I hope that's how this whole conversation has been. You had no idea what I'm going to ask. I love that. It's the element of surprise, right? So you're sipping this ensemble anywhere in the world, and you can sit next to and have a conversation and a mezcal with anybody in the world. Who would you love to just sit there and have a conversation with and sip?
It's a very tough question to answer.
Of course it
fast,
is.
But oof. Probably Attenborough.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Over the bridge over River Kwai, great movie, right?
Well, there's 2 Attenborough.
Which one are you talking about? Richard Attenborough?
No.
Oh, okay.
Richard used to be, by the way, like the director of the University of Sussex, but the honorary one.
Did he really?
Yeah.
The director, Richard Attenborough. Yeah.
No, the brother.
Oh,
the one
I see.
yeah, the one that makes the how you call that? The nature.
Oh, the Planet Earth thing?
Planet Earth.
Yeah. Oh, he's that guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a brother.
I didn't realize
They are
it's a
brothers,
brother.
and his last name is Attenborough as well.
I think you'd learn a lot about everything.
Yeah, but he's a guy. In many ways, I'm a big fan, but he's a guy that when he's explaining the science, is really showing the passion, and you very easily understand the relevance of what is the words he is saying, because and he has this incredible artistic ability to connect images and build stories, and I don't know, he is the ultimate. What he does, showing us the stories of these plants and animals out there, is what I would like to do with every brand I do. Like the coherence, the logic, and the deep passions that occur behind everything around it. This is what I think. I mean, I admire that. The ability to understand the context and understand that the context is as important as the element itself. So, and this is what brands are lacking. A lot of product, but they are not perfect in their surroundings. They are not connected to authentic things. They are not obvious. They are not logical. And we need to make wonderful products that are logical. That is why this hasn't existed before. It was absolutely logical. I think Ancho is an example of that. You know, it's a very logical thing, and it's really. And I would like to think that I will be able to have the honor to keep bringing from Mexico this type of experiences for the world and for my own enjoyment.
It's amazing. It's been really a pleasure, one, sipping mezcal with you, two, getting to talk about the lovely products and the lovely people, and your just checkered past of academia and now entrepreneur with Montelobos and Ancho Reyes. It's brilliant. I don't know what's in store for the class tonight, Las Perlas, but can't wait to see what it's all about. And hopefully, thankfully, Camila has made this all happen, and William Grandson's being a wonderful partner as always. Let's connect in San Antonio if we can.
Yeah, let's go and have a mezcal there too.
And we'll hang out with Ricardo too. Talk a little bit. So cool. Yvonne, thank you so much.
Thank you for the interview. I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, there we have it. Dr. Yvonne Saldaña of Ancho Reyes and Montelobos Mezcal. We sipped the Espadín, the Tobalá, and a new ensemble that will be coming out very soon. You know, sipping the mezcal with the man who created it while we talk about his life, there is really no more connective way to have a conversation. I'm glad that we were rolling. I'm glad that we were recording this moment. You know, he just turned 40 last year, and honestly, that's a big milestone. He's done a lot for this industry. He stands as one of the big pillars of innovation, creativity, and preserving heritage. It's an interesting balance because on one end, he wants to preserve the tradition of mezcal, and some people are very, very fast and kind of stubborn about those methods of production, but at the same time, he wants to do new things. It's East meets West, old meets new. I think this is a very important attitude and paradigm to have about mezcal. So thank you so much, Dr. Yvonne Saldaña, Camille, Austin, and William Grant & Sons for making this happen. It truly was a remarkable moment for me, and I can't wait to talk to you guys soon. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V with Mike G. I finally started watching the new Queer Eye, and I almost started tearing up after episode 1. If you're watching that, or if you're thinking, MasterChef, I don't know, why the fuck do I keep watching this? I have no idea. Please, keep going.